So I'm actually just checking my social media for my haters. Like, okay, cool, I'm there, I'm with it. Okay, welcome to, I'm still doing that intro, I'm not quite sure why. I'm not even sure I like it anymore, you know? But we'll do it. Welcome to Entrepreneur Life with me, Joel Campbell, and I am an entrepreneur. I'm not sure if I just feel like I've grown past the intro or if I just have got bored of it. I don't know. When I first started using it, it happened really organically. And I was like, how do I do an intro? I was like, how do I do it? I was like, well, I'll just say like, welcome to Entrepreneur Life. And it's like, oh, with me, Joel Campbell. And it just sort of kind of gathered pace. But anyway, so I'm not sure. I can't tell. I'm going to talk very briefly about CEO life because I was thinking about what to chat about today. Because as I've said before, a lot of my weeks can be quite samey. So I didn't really want to kind of just go over the same old stuff over and over and over and over. And I'm very aware as well that last week I wasn't feeling fantastic last week. So that definitely had an impact. But also I was kind of found myself at a bit of a, not necessarily a crossroads, but just where do I bring the best value? What's next? And that's kind of like where I'm going to pitch the CEO Life piece. So still very much actively recruiting for my new assistant. So Chloe and I have got the one final phone interview to do this afternoon. And that's all of them. Then this afternoon we'll sit down, we'll go through everyone, we'll score everyone, and we'll decide who we're inviting back to the interviews. And we'll probably talk about the process a little bit later, so I won't go into too much about that. But that's still very much kind of a high priority piece. There's a couple of other bits I can't talk about, I won't talk about at the moment, but they're quite exciting. If they come to full fruition, they'll be amazing. If they don't, they'll still be a nice part of the journey. So that will happen in the coming weeks. And then really, it's just been day-to-day CEO world. So what does that look like? And I guess that when you start your own business, at the very beginning, you are everything to everyone, doing everything for everyone effectively. You literally do the whole lot. Regardless of the business, you have to become, if you're not already, you have to become a master of all the different arts. So you have whatever the product is. So for my business, for example, service-based business, delivering tours and experiences. So you become a bit of a master in terms of how to deliver tours and experiences. But then you have to get people through the door. So you have to become a bit of a master of marketing in terms of how am I going to engage people. Then you have to become a master of sales. And then you have to become a master of health and safety, and a master of all the intricacies that come to running a business. So insurance cover, accountancy, financials. We spoke about marketing, spoke about sales, HR as soon as you start employing people, legalities, legislatives, planning, permissions, making sure you've got the right usage for the buildings, leases, licenses, commercial, so much stuff. So you have to do all these things. And it's great and it's fun and it's brilliant and you're working through these things and a lot of it is theory-based, and you start bringing it to life, and it's cool and it's very, very exciting. And then it grows and it grows and it grows. That's the idea. And when it grows to a point where you find you start putting people into place to be the masters of these, call them masters of the universe. I'm an 80s, 90s kid, so He-Man's a big thing. So master of the universe, so you put in a master of the universe of marketing, a master of the universe of sales, one of finance, one in HR, and now employee culture. It's very different to how it used to be. So you put those people in. You put in, directors of different departments or different areas, different businesses, different functions. You put in chief operating officers and such like that. And then you have your CEO at the top. And what happens for you as an entrepreneur, certainly what's happened for me, and as a business owner, is you're an owner-operator, which ultimately means, yes, I own the business, but I'm also actively operating in it all the time. So I'm within it all the time. And if I removed myself, the business would cease to operate. It would slow down, or over a period of time, it would start to dwindle out. And I've been working very hard over the, 10 years, but certainly over the last year or so, few years, trying to get it right so I can pull myself out of being the operator. So I'm just the owner, not the operator. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It's not because I'm lazy and because I don't want to work. It's far from that. It's because for the business to grow on scale, en masse, think big. So I'm trying to get our business over to the 100 million benchmark. I can't be the operator for that to happen because you have to have so many operators to scale to that position. So I have to remove myself to allow other people to go forth, make mistakes, get it wrong, to learn, to get it right, to succeed, to grow it, to move it. And I have to do that in multiple different areas. So that's tricky, because you have to be able to take the step back, you have to let all of that grow and flow, but you also have to keep enough commercial tightness, and we use the word tightness, to ensure that all the mistakes that are being made don't compile to massive problems, and therefore you go under financially. You have to make sure that you're making just enough mistakes to be learning, but getting enough things right to continue growing. So it's a balance, it's a fine balance. And finding the right people is absolutely key and crucial in this, and finding the right department heads, the right senior team, the right people to be masters of the universes is the difference, I think, between success and failure. And that's where I'm trying to figure out now what I do as CEO, and how long actually is it before I'm no longer CEO. So I'm starting succession planning now of when am I no longer CEO, and somebody else does that, and that really is kind of the exciting, I guess that's my next big goal, is losing the CEO title. People look at CEOs and they think it's great, you've got the desks, the offices, the desks, I guess I'm looking at a desk. You've got the offices, cars, holidays, all the nice things that come with it. And that is true. There's a lot of lovely perks of being a CEO or a COO. But there's also a huge amount of pressure, huge amount of responsibility, huge amount of challenge. And I've just I just put an article up on LinkedIn about why I see the negative, which is really, I found it really interesting, because it was all about how people had asked me, some of our employees had asked me why I always look at the negative. So I explained the reason why, and I won't go into it now. If you're interested, go read the article. I think it's an interesting read for a few minutes, and it just helps to explain that. So that's on my LinkedIn. In terms of like that goal of moving on, for me, the CEO title technically stands for Chief Executive Officer. So you oversee everything. You are looking after everything, making sure everything ticks, everything moves. And that is true. But I think a more appropriate description of the title is Chief Everything Officer. And that's what I say to people when they say, what do you do? If I say I'm a CEO, I'm a Chief Everything Officer. I do everything. But actually I do everything kind of like not particularly well. And the bits that I want to do a really, really good job. Just like everybody else, I want to do a really, really good job every single day. I want to be a killer every single day. And you can't do that when you're doing everything. And I know that I'm struggling to structure where I don't do everything. So the best way for me to do that is just to go, I'm out. I'm done. I'm just drawing a line. I'm done. I'm out. Which is what I effectively did last week. I spoke to the team. I spoke to my senior team, my director team. Then I spoke to the wider team. And effectively, that's what I did, was I pulled myself out. So that's quite cool. And we're a week in, seems to be going okay. Give it time. And that's more about me, whether I can stay out. So that's all fine. And I think realistically for me now, this is about working through the things that I do really, really well, how I build that into my day so I can focus on those things, how I don't get drawn into other stuff or let myself get drawn into other stuff, and really how I can ensure that I'm bringing the best value possible by being an absolute killer in what I do. And at the moment, the areas that I'm focusing far more on is the cultural side of things. It's all very still behind the scenes, sorting out a really solid foundation for our filing systems, our processes, our policies, our cultural work, how we're going to share it out, how we're going to actually get it from vision to excellence, and how we're going to get it there and how we're going to deliver it. So I'm working a lot on that thread at the moment, and we're going to utilize that same pathway for all the stuff we roll out operationally. So it's a big piece of work. It's a really important piece because it is going to be the foundation of how we communicate through all of our people, every single thing we do, and how we run every single business. So I'm focusing an awful lot on that. I am focusing a chunk of time on recruitment, specifically into the EA role, and I think that as we start to recruit more people again very actively into January. I think there'll be a good chunk of recruitment that we're gonna start doing in the new year. We've held back for the last few months, and that's going to have to change next year as we start to look at scale and growth again. And one of the things I will be looking to do is not get involved in the active recruitment, but make sure that the process is so solid that we're recruiting the right people. And we're not just going, they'll do, we need someone for the role, they're there, let's grab them. We're actually going to do what we do need someone for the role, but if they're not right, let's get the right person, because that's the way to do it. And then the other aspect I guess I'm going to work on is looking at what other stuff, businesses, services, provisions, offerings, feed into our ecosystem and we should be doing next. So what are we tackling next in terms of the next development at one of the jails, the next acquisition that we'd like to do, the next investment piece, the next element of growth that we'd like to do within Cove Group? What does that look like? And how do we get that started? And what I need to do is very much keep myself as much as I can in the vision phase, to a degree in some of the innovation, but I let the excellence piece, that delivery piece, be taken care of by other people. So I need to figure out how that's going to filter down. And I think we're still missing somebody in the core team that is very project-based. There's somebody that's like, we'll take this vision, this idea, wrap innovation around it and make sure it gets delivered and make sure that excellence is pushed out at the other side, and really making sure that whole project gets from start through to finish and beyond. And I think we're missing that within Cove Group. And that's something that we need to be considering about bringing somebody in to do that. So that's somebody that's got real skill set in project management. And I think that will be a really good place for us to be. So yeah, and I'm trying to just curate my inner circle, because I try and keep a relatively tight inner circle of people that are absolutely solid in what they do, super committed, their ability is just beyond measure, and are just incredibly enthused and engaged. And that's what I'm trying to create at the moment in that central kind of core circle effectively for me. And I've got some really good people in there and I want to bring some more into it. And that's going to help us grow and expand. And of course, got to keep an eye on it commercially, see what's going on. But we've got a fantastic COO who's really taking everything forwards and driving it and putting a lot of structure. And that's a key thing. Putting structure to what we currently have is absolutely paramount to now successful growth. And that's going to become easier as we go forward, because all the new things that we have will automatically have structure embedded and put to it, as opposed to going through this kind of chaotic entrepreneurial world, getting so far down the line and then having to try and rebuild the whole thing with structure. If we can start it in that space, that'll make a difference. It makes sense to me. It still allows me to be very flexible in terms of what I'm doing. I went and looked, give you a very quick example, and then I'm going to go back to my desk because I've got loads of work I need to crack onto today. But we looked at a business recently. It was another attraction. It fits within our portfolio. I really liked it. I was like, yep, we should do this 100%. We could fold it in tomorrow. It'd be great. Here's all the benefits. Boom, 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 boom. Let's do it. Spoke to my COO, our attraction director, so to James and Charlie. I was like, hey guys, I think we should do this. They're like, okay. I was like, I think you guys need to go look at this though. And they were like, yeah, absolutely. We definitely need to look at this. We definitely need to look at the figures. So we looked at the figures. They went and visited the attraction and they came back and said, yeah, it's cool. It's great. We get it. We understand where you're coming from. We don't think it's going to work practically. And I was like, oh, what? And we discussed it, and they very, very clearly laid out for me. And ultimately, there's growth space within the other attraction, which is good, but there's not the growth that we want to see as an organization to the level we want to see it. And there's not really enough margin in it to kind of make it work. And that's not anyone's fault. It's just the restrictions of the size of the actual attraction and what you can physically do in terms of numbers. You go do the numbers based on what your building does. And then they came back to where we are currently, and they went, there's so much space to grow what we currently do and do it better and add new services and add new things and scale from where we are now in terms of how many visitors are coming up to that kind of 300,000 visitors a year. They were like, there's so much growth still to do in our business. do we really want to focus any attention, like even a % of attention, on another attraction that we know has a limited ceiling of growth? And I thought that was a really interesting perspective. I think that just magnified for me the importance of having those kind of people in our business, because they effectively look at it in a different way to I do, far more practically and far more pragmatically. And actually, they're right. It would be, I wouldn't say a silly business to take on, but it would shift our focus away from what we are currently on, and we can do so much more from where we are. And that is the difference, I guess, between somebody like me, that I would say I'm very much entrepreneurial based from a visionary perspective. Yeah, we can do that. That's great. That's partially driven by my flair for loving that kind of stuff and that challenge and wanting to add and do something more and bring it in. And there's a lot of intelligence of doing it because it brings it into an ecosystem, and we could fold it in tomorrow. There's also an element of my ADHD-ness of me going, oh, okay, cool, right, on to the next thing, which again is a very entrepreneurial trait. So that's all fine. But having those guys to really pressure test and really check, does this fit and does this work? And does it make sense at this time? Is a huge difference. And I wrote an article a long time ago now, I have to try and dig it out, it'll be on LinkedIn somewhere, about the difference between an entrepreneur and a business person. And I think this sums it up very nicely. I'm very entrepreneurial based, and I would say that my directors are very business person based. And that's not to say that you can't do both, but you tend to have, I guess, skill sets, but more attributes and behaviors that favor one rather than the other. So finding a balance for a company that's growing is really, really important. And also, like, this is the big thing, and I said this to my directors the other day, you guys have to be strong enough to tell me to fuck off. You absolutely have to be strong enough to tell me, no, Joel, we're not doing that, and this is the reason why. And that's really difficult to say to effectively your boss, no, but that's why I try and give them all of the autonomy I can so they can do it and they can make those decisions, because I think that's really important, because if we don't do it like that, we're taking on stuff that, yes, will work, but will actually hamper the growth and getting to the vision that we're trying to get to. So they're actually getting us there better, more efficiently, and more sensibly than I would do. I think that's the balance I'm trying to achieve. We've got the right people in the right places, move in the right direction. Now it's a question of how do we put jet fuel on this bucker? Sorry, swearing. How do we put jet fuel on this and just accelerate now so we can just go for it? Because I think that's where we're at. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to head off back to my desk over there. I'm going to do a crack through a number of emails. I've got some other work I need to do. I've got meetings this afternoon at 1 about new programs and stuff. Symposium at 2. Final interview around 3:30, and then I'm going to sit down for the last hour of the day with Chloe and go through all that. So you'll get to see some of those bits. But that's been it today. So that's been Entrepreneur Life with me, Joel Campbell, and I am an entrepreneur.